I'm a 2-time cancer survivor.
You are?
Yes, sir.
What kind of cancer?
Ovarian and cervical.
Oh my God.
I'm 42 years old and had it way young.
Where'd you grow up?
I was born in a little small town called Alpine, Texas. Like southwest Texas, between Del Rio and Fort Stockton. Sanderson is, you have to go to Alpine. If you live in Sanderson, you have to go to Alpine or Fort Stockton to have your baby. There's no doctors.
Small town.
Very small town. One stoplight, but it doesn't stop. It just blinks yellow. Everybody knows everybody.
What was your family like?
Well, my mom's family were my heart, my grandparents. They are. Rest in peace. I just lost my dad 2 years ago, but
Sorry.
I call my grandpa my dad. He was my daddy. He was my whole world. He was a great man. He was on the railroad for many years. They got in a horrible car accident, and which caused him to not be able to work anymore due to like medications, seizure medications and stuff. But because of that accident, they won a settlement of a couple million. And back in the early 90s, that was a lot of money. My grandfather, of course, went crazy with the money and invested wrong. He did build an RV park there. He had an auto parts store. He made his own transmission fluids. My grandfather was like this weird scientist. He made bombs, and that's why he didn't have any hearing left. But he did do one thing awesome with the money. He still owns all the mineral rights to a ranch he bought out there. So my grandmother still collects, from that. But my mom is she's a strong woman. But she was more a friend to me. Her husband died when I was 11. And then my mom just lost herself, so I became mom to my siblings. My dad he works in the oil field. Good old white boy, redneck,
Your stepdad or your biological?
My real father.
Biological dad.
Beer drinking, tool pushing in the oil field, and he was not, okay, let's just say this. He thought by just paying child support to my mom, that was his way of being present in our lives. But my mom has always been the kind to be like, even if she's married 5 times. Yeah. So, I always swore I wouldn't be like her, because I didn't have a childhood, I was a mother raising her kids because she was always too worried about the next husband. Who else is gonna take care of me? That type of shit, chasing the money. I get it that, she to this day will not admit, her wrongs and all that, but it's okay. You can't force nobody. But, due to just having, different households, and then my dad picking us up for vacations and dropping us off with my drunk ass grandfather, who was the sheriff of the town. Things happen to kids. Things happen, and
What'd you go through?
And parents don't want to take responsibility for those things because, Lord forbid, they look like a bad parent,
Yeah. What happened to you?
I was molested by my grandfather.
Your dad's?
On my dad's side.
Your dad's dad?
Um,
Sheriff?
our body has an amazing way of suppressing things to help us not suffer the rest, it helps us forget about very traumatic things when you don't say anything at all. As a child, I wasn't afraid. First, I've always had a spirit, I'm a Sagittarius, so I've always had a free spirit. I've never ever really been afraid of anything, but I just knew that it wasn't right. And I didn't say anything to my parents until I was 13. By this time, my mom was on husband, I don't know, 3, 4. I started having nightmares about it. And I told my mom, and all she could say was, well, I thought something was always happening to you. I just didn't, I thought you were just having bad dreams because you would, cry at night and the man is gonna get me. And I said, how could you not do anything about it, And when I told my father, he's always had something terribly against me, and I've always been the pushed out one, the different one, He said, nobody in my family would ever do anything like that to you. You're just a fucking crackhead whore, and you just want attention. So if your mom and dad don't protect you and don't believe you, where else do you turn to, by this time I'm living in El Paso, Texas. And the border is right there. I started smoking a lot of weed. And that led to cocaine, powder cocaine, like very early at 14. I went across the border with a friend of mine, her mom, and her and her family, they're all from Juarez. I went over to go watch a soccer game. And that night, I was raped by her brother. At 14 years old. They gave me a date rape drug in my drink because we went to a drive-thru and they handed me this big blue drink, and I thought I was so badass, like, hey, I'm, grown up and I got this cute boy here. And mind you, he wasn't even a boy. He was 23 years old. And I vaguely remember coming in and out of it. I remember screaming and crying and pushing him off of me. I remember him putting his hand over my mouth, shut up, and he was telling me in Spanish. And then the next thing I remember, I'm in a shower and they're just washing me off and they're laughing at me. And I'm bleeding and they're just laughing at me. And the next day, I begged her mom, just take me home, please. Just take me home. And so we crossed over and they brought me home, and I just stayed in the shower for hours. And I never told anyone. I never told my mom. I never told a soul. And I remember I ended up pregnant at 14. And I have an amazing relationship with God, But back then I didn't know. But he's funny and he does things for his, for our protection when we don't even know who he is. But I had a miscarriage. And it sounds strange, but I thank him for that. So at 14, here I am. I didn't get to share my story about how I lost my virginity with my friends, you know. I just had to make one up, and it was just always a subject that kept me hostage and prisoner for many years. From that time on, I did any and every kind of drug you could think of in excess, to the point of alcohol poisoning every other weekend. Cocaine was my escape. That was my main drug. As long as I stayed high, I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to remember, you know. Because the minute I was sober, it just overtook me. So my heart, that was kind of like the first callus over my heart. And now I couldn't, you know, turn to my dad, and I definitely couldn't turn to my mom, because they don't believe anything I tell them, because I'm always gone. They're always looking for me. I skipped school all the time. But I looked for my dad in every man that came my way. He was the first man that I loved and the first man that broke my heart. And it's so hard being an adolescent and just wanting to be heard, you know? I acted out so much just for attention. The wrong attention, I guess, but just someone to believe me. Me and my mom's relationship was just, I mean, I was so angry with her. I would end up drinking on the weekends and coming home. The cops would bring me home. I'd be in the bars in, you know, on this side, not in Juarez, but over here. And I would hit my mother. Like, I would fight with her. And she just thought I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what's wrong with this child. And so her and my father put me in a behavioral home, I guess, so they didn't have to, as long as they could sweep it under the rug, that's what they did. No problems ever got solved in my family, you know? As long as their names didn't get tainted and they had the money for it and they could push it to the side, it wasn't their problem. So I learned at a very, very young age that I am my own problem. I have to take care of me. They don't understand. They didn't want to understand addiction because they thought that made them bad parents. And Lord forbid they look bad to anyone, you know. It's so pathetic, you know. So my mom ended up leaving him, that guy, and we moved. Well, when we were with him, we were in a little town outside of El Paso called Anthony. Then we went back to El Paso. And my mom had a bunch of roommates in a big old house, and she started taking me to the bars with her. Because, I mean, I was beautiful, and I could win bar tabs and contests, and they could drink for free, you know? Little did she ever think, you know, that there was way older men around me. She allowed me to date a 37-year-old at 15, you know? And I didn't care because I didn't know who I was. I didn't want to know who I was because I had when those things happen to you, you question yourself and your whole existence, and like, what the fuck did I ever do to deserve everything that I felt that like I felt on one hand like I was being punished, but on the other hand I felt like I can't even act like I can't even feel sorry for myself because it's all my fault. Because I choose to get high and I choose to sleep around, and I'm just a crackhead whore. That's what my own father called me. Me and my mom, we fought, for years, back and forth, until I was about 16 and I was in high school. I was gonna graduate as a junior. I missed a lot, but when I was there, I did really good. At this point, I was like so skinny because I was so strung out on cocaine. And when I didn't do cocaine, I was on those mini thin pills. I just felt that I had to look perfect and I had to be perfect. I couldn't make a mistake because I just wanted to be accepted by my parents. But that never, happened. And besides, my dad was so racist and prejudiced, and he tried to force that down my throat, and I hated him for that. To this day, I've never ever been with a white man, just because my father tried to shove ignorance and hate down my throat. I've never seen color. I see people and I love people. That's ultimately down the road, I know now what my purpose is in, all of these really horrible, awful things had to happen in order for me to know why. And so for many years I blamed my parents for everything, I sat on the pity pot for many years. At 16 years old, I moved to Odessa, Texas with a cousin of mine. And she was 3 years older than me, and she had her own little company. She sold roses in all of the bars at night. So right up my alley, you know what I mean? So I started helping her do that, and boy, I met my husband. Well, he's my ex-husband now, but of 9 years. He was one of the biggest drug dealers in Odessa, Texas. We had unlimited supply of cocaine, and you name it, he had it. I'm 17 at this point, okay? And who doesn't? I have all the drugs that I can ever want. All the money at 17, all the flashy cars. I thought I had it made, So I'm up on this pedestal I'm fucking untouchable. Fuck you and fuck everybody, because I can do this. So I started, becoming so consumed with myself, like my looks. I used every bit of what I had to get what I wanted, and not even cared or thought about the cost or the price of it, 6 months after I met David, I found out I was pregnant with my first child, Marissa. I quit doing all drugs. My whole pregnancy, I didn't do any drugs. I had my baby 9 months later, and then I get a phone call, and there's another woman saying that she just had David's baby as well. And I'm like, okay, so 2.5 years later, I have my other son, my first son, and then another 2 years later, I have my other son. But in between those, he had kids. Lovely relationship. It was full of abuse, mental, emotional, so much physical. I still didn't know who I was. I was just allowing abuse because that's what I was worth. That's it. That's what I deserved. But I was a damn good wife and mom. Me and David stayed together about 9 years. 8, 9 years, around there. When I was 8 months pregnant with my last child, he beat the living shit out of me. And this is, I used to pray to God, give me the strength to leave this man. And it never happened. I became who he wanted me to be because I was so young, and I just became his identity and his wife and he would rape me to have sex with him. Because I was so disgusted by him and the way he just had kids with other women, and then he just didn't love me, and once again, let down, That was the second biggest callous over my heart. I never imagined my husband would ever cheat on me, because he did, he was, the first, the years were okay, but after so long, I lost my husband to drugs, and I don't mean physically, but he never used, he just sold. And then when he lost his mother, he started getting high, and we lost everything. But he was hiding everything from me and beating me up at when I would catch on to it. It was just horrible. It was horrible. My kids were, so traumatized by this. So I get away from him and go to Austin, Texas with my mom. And this is in about 2004. And mind you, I'd been with David 8 years and never cheated on the man, never looked at any other man. But I had to start working now because he never allowed me to work. Well, okay, I start working at a convenience store, and of course there's thousands of men that come in, and I'm starting to get all this attention. And I'm like, hell, why not? I'm single now, I'll go on a date or two, but that turned into going out every night, every weekend, getting drunk. Alcohol was my friend for a very long time. And any drug at that point, but mainly cocaine still. I met this man named Joe when I was living outside of Austin in a little town called Hutto. And Joe had plenty of money and loved me. And never in my life had I ever thought that, I never thought that just taking money from him, in exchange for my time was prostitution. I never looked at it that way. But it was easy money, and I had 3 kids, and I was by myself. And I started hanging out with Joe a whole lot more, and I had never been introduced to crack cocaine. But I went over to Joe's, and he was acting real strange, one day. And he didn't want to let me in, and I said, let me in this fucking house. Like, for real, let me in, what the hell are you doing? So he let me in, and I went into the back room, and he had a whole bunch of crack on the bed. And I seen how euphoric it seemed when he would get high, and I was like, let me try it. He said, no. I said, if you don't let me fucking try it, I'll never come over here again. You will not get no more parts of me. Nothing. I used that as power, over men, and it didn't make me feel good, but I got what I wanted, I was, this time, it's always been the Christy show, it's always been about me. So in 2005, I started smoking crack. Little by little, turned into A lot turned into all day, every day, never going home, riding with him back and forth to go pick up crack. You know, never would he let me out of the car, but I noticed the places that he was going to, you know. And I'd never asked him where he was getting the money from, you know, but I knew it was crooked, and I knew he was finally, like, I found out he was involved in like fraud and some checks and stuff, but he never forgot to give me mine. Even if Joe would call me from deep in Austin and he'd be like, come meet me at the Motel 6, but don't get mad because I got a couple prostitutes in here. Like, I don't give a fuck, you know? Just give me my money. Well, Joe got arrested, and then I still had a drug habit. So the little town that he would go pick up in, I paid very good attention to the places, you know, he would go to. And I knew those streets there were waiting for me. Those men, that town, I was like a sheep amongst wolves out there. So Joe's in jail, but I have a lot of money, you know? So I go to this one guy's house and I tell him who I am, and he's like, oh yeah, I know who you are. And from that from that point on, it went on for 4 good years, 5 good years, and a whole run of crack cocaine and every bit of the disgusting lifestyle that it entails. I learned the game in the streets very quickly. I learned that I had to make sure that I did for me. Nobody else can. I couldn't let. I was never gonna let a man control my drug habit and my money. I was on a fucking mission to just kill myself, pretty much, you know? I really didn't care. My mom took my kids, and that was the end of my life, I thought. I stayed in that town 3.5, 4 years. I prostituted every day. I had a very, very expensive habit because I was able to, I was very, what's the word? Everybody wanted that girl Christy. Where's that girl Christy? You know, where's that white girl Christy? I was, and I just knew what to do, and I broke a whole lot of bank accounts and and a whole lot of hearts, and and I just I didn't care about anything at this point, because how could you when you're so fucking high all the time? I had so many instances where I shouldn't even be here, you know, men choking me out, beating me up. I started robbing them before they could even have sex with me, because at this point I'm like, fuck you, I'm gonna fuck you before you try to fuck me, you know? Because I used to get high to feel good and have fun, and it got to the point where when I'm getting high, stay the fuck away from me. Don't touch me. Leave me the hell alone, you know? And I went through so many years of this, and, you know, one day, I almost took a man's life. From my addiction. And I couldn't stop. I could not stop choking that poor man. And everything that any man had ever done to me, everything that, it just came over me, and I could not let go. And I finally got the man to let go of his wallet. And I left him in the middle of the street in his truck. This is so sickening. Like, I was choking the man in the middle of the day and waving cars around me. They didn't even know what I was doing. I was parked in the middle of the street. It's insane. And once the man let go, I just heard him gasp, and I didn't give a shit. I grabbed the money, and I had blood all over me because he was an elderly man. And elderly people's skin is just so fragile, and I didn't give a fuck. I did not care about who I hurt in the middle of my, destruction out there. I gathered up the money and I took off running down the, down the alley, and I jumped over the neighbor's fence and I dipped off into the trap house. And another friend of mine, another prostitute that stayed in there with me, she said, "No, you didn't. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Like, let's get you cleaned up, And I said, I did. I told y'all I was going to get that asshole one day, Well, lo and behold, the devil never sleeps. And it just so happens that there's a man in the back room with 2 big cookies of crack, and I've got all this money. So I pay them to shut up, And off to the races I am going again, going, and then it was never enough. But I was afraid. I was afraid that, that this man was going to go to the police. And that man did go to the police, and he lied. He said it was a black woman who did it to him. And I left town. I went to a whole nother town. I went to Round Rock, Texas. And in Round Rock, Texas, I go into a house, like this friend of a friend let me stay there. All these people in there, they're smoking methamphetamine. I've never smoked methamphetamine at this point, and I'm frustrated as shit because I want crack. And meth ain't shit, and I don't want to do it because, see, that's a trashy white people drug. Go figure, I was sick in the head. Like, bitch, what are you? You're white, stupid. But at that point, I was raised so Hispanic, like I've never fit in even with my family, Something came over me though at this point. I mean, throughout all these years though, mind you, it was horrible, awful. So many abuse and just so many men and so much, even women. I was whatever I needed to be at the time for whoever, just to get high over a substance so fucking small, it defeated me. But at that time when I went to stay with these other people, these 2 guys, they had a house full of strippers in and out, and here I am just like, there's no crack here, and I'm about to go back to Taylor, so I went out rewind. I was in the bathroom cleaning one day because they were all gone. And I just felt something just like come over me, and I fell on the bathroom floor and I just laid there. And that's one thing I'll never forget, how it felt, what it looked like, how it smelled. Like, I felt somebody just push me to my knees. And I was never like a religious person or anything, but I knew there was a God, but I just didn't ever pay no attention to him, How could you when you're batting for the devil, But something came over me and I just said, God, if you are who you say you are, show me. Or just take me, because I'm tired of fucking existing. Surviving and existing. I don't want to be anybody's problem no more. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt nobody. For me, I don't care for me, but just if I'm around my kids, I guess I'm just hurting them. That's what my family, says. In all the times that I did some fucked up shit though, it could never amount to what my parents did to me. And I still stand on that today. I have an amazing relationship with my 3 kids because it was my addiction. I never let them feel that it was because of them. You know, that's just what it was. It was mine.
Did you raise them?
Yeah. My aunt had my daughter. Because, see, I had gotten cleaned up there, you know? Like, I was like, when I asked God to show me who he was, boy, did he. I mean, like, I didn't know what to do because that night I went out. I jumped in a car with 3 guys because I just wanted to go make some money. Little did I know they were planning on raping me. And I was just like, how many more is it gonna take? How many more men have to, you don't even have a soul no more to give, you know? But I was led to a bar and that I used to go to all the time before drugs. Well, hard drugs, because to me, crack was the hard drug, but powder cocaine wasn't, in a sick way of thinking, you know. God orchestrated the whole thing, you know, and I ended up meeting up with a friend that had been in prison that was a good friend of mine that ultimately led me to his uncle's house, who happened to be the founder of NA24 in Austin, Texas. And there was a little program in the back room called Project Helping Hands. And there was only 6 beds. And you could live there and get yourself clean and sober. But you had to attend 2 or 3 meetings a day. And you had rules and curfew. Well, because I went from one extreme to the next. I went from wanting to stay completely high and just to kill myself to I was on fire inside for something better than that, something greater than the life I was letting kill me. Well, I found out what it was, you know. I was on fire to know my God, you know. And God placed this amazing person in my life, and he just so happened to be a recovering heroin addict for many years, you know. And I stayed obedient. Like, I wanted to know a different life, you know. So I went to church with him, and I got baptized, and I did all the holy religious stuff, you know. But on the down low, the devil came real quick, and I was still getting high. But I was using him because he gave me a home. But see, I was so fucking hypocritical. Like, I had 2 faces. Going to church with Roman all the time, you know. But then the minute he would get upset or angry with me, I just throw my body at him, which was so wrong of me. But through all of this, I've always struggled with addiction. Always. It took me to prison. I used prison as a blessing, you know. I thought I did. I got out in 20. There's so much more, you know, in between, but it's all pretty much the same, you know, on the streets, getting fucked up, you know, doing.
When did you come to LA?
Here we go. I've been here a year. So I got out of prison in 2011. I went back to my home in 2014 and stayed there till 2014. The little bitty town Sanderson, which I hadn't been there in almost 20 years, you know. But my mom was there and she had my boys. And my daughter was living in Virginia with my aunt. So I got out all gung-ho, like, okay, I'm gonna stay obedient. I'm not gonna get high. I'm not gonna drink. I'm gonna be a mother, you know. The first night home, I was drunk, sloppy drunk, disgusted. with myself. So once again, like, all of that shit just piled back on me. I was like, you see, you dumb bitch, you can't even fucking stay, you know? You can't even stay obedient to anything. Like, I drank and drank and drank. Then I started snorting cocaine again. And this town is so small. Of course, everybody knows your business before you do. I was tired of it. You know, my kids were, you know, I got my daughter back. You know, I got my boys, of course. And my mom moved off because I was already fighting with her again, you know. Fighting with my brother and his pregnant girlfriend. Beat her up. She was pregnant. Beat her up just because I was drunk, you know. So many of these nights, I had managed to push every single person in my life away from me again in a matter of months. But as long as I didn't do drugs, I was good, you know. As long as I didn't do drugs, I wasn't an alcoholic. I just like to drink. There's nothing to do in the town. Every excuse in the book, you know. Whatever takes the shine off of me, you know, I'm gonna point everybody else's shit out to them. You're a drunk, but I'm not, you know. I got in fights. And then, okay, so I got in a relationship finally, a serious one. And I was tired of being there with no family. So I called up my dad, my biological father. He had moved by Abilene, Texas. Dad, hey, you got that empty house at the RV park. Can me and the kids come? I want to be by my sister. I want to be around the kids, my nieces. I need family. Well, he, you know, bought me a brand new car. My dad came down and he was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're doing really well. I know your car broke down, but he brought me a brand new car. In 2013, he bought me a 2014 Ford Escape. Me and the kids packed up and my new boyfriend, and we moved up there. So all this time I'm in a relationship with that guy. I'm not doing any drugs, but I'm drinking a lot. And violence was always present with me. I was a very violent person. I put my hands on so many people and well, we weren't together there very long, and he ended up leaving, of course, and then now here I am, heartbroken and alone again, and I start meeting all these people. I hadn't smoked any crack since 2010. Right away, I found the crack neighborhood in Abilene, and then all the people. And they so quickly became my family again because the streets were my family that embraced me. That's what I thought. Because fuck the blood people. How dare them? How dare them love me? They don't love me, you know? They don't care. Because if they cared, they wouldn't have ever allowed me to go this far. You know, it was always about poor fucking me, you know? But then, you know, I got real with myself. You know, this world didn't owe me shit. They didn't. I got to grasp, I got it together. I dibbled and dabbled in the crack for a minute. But I met somebody and he was amazing. He was the perfect man at the wrong time. But he encouraged me and he built me up and he said, I don't see the outside of you. I see past it. I see the hurts. I see all of that shit that nobody wants to deal with. I see that in you. Get off the dope. And mind you, he was a dope dealer. And he never would sell me dope, ever. Never gave me dope at all. He said, you're beautiful. You're a beautiful ass woman. Get your act together. And I did. For 2 years. And then during my crack days way back, you know, in Austin, I had met a man in Bartlett, Texas, Billy Carter. And that man opened his heart and his home to me at that time. And he loved me when I wasn't lovable, and he loved me when I couldn't love myself. And he taught me how to love myself again. And he became my best friend of 12 years. There was nothing in this world that Mr. Carter would not do for me. I never imagined having a 60-something-year-old best friend, you know? But he was my strength, my wisdom, my whole world. I talked to him. It wasn't a day we didn't talk. Well, he got sick. And I would find a way to go down there every weekend after work to go make sure I was there for him while he was sick, just like he did for me. And I lost him very unexpectedly. I never knew what grief was like. I lost everything losing Billy. I went into the deepest depression I've ever been in my life. I didn't get off the floor for like a whole week. I didn't go to work. My kids moved out of my house and moved in next door to my sister. Grief crippled me. I started smoking a lot of meth. And I stayed very stuck in that grief. And I started selling a lot of meth. I was going, you know, just so I didn't have to think of him. My family turned on me. They shit on me just because they didn't know him. They weren't there for me. They didn't check on me. They didn't know they didn't give two shits if I was in that house dead or alive. My kids would come check on me every day. And I would stay gone because just being there hurt. Being there was not good for me at all. Me alone I'm not good alone. Well, I met somebody who I'm still currently with right at that time. He 17 years younger than me, but he was living in Texas. And the first day I met him, I sold him heroin. Long story short, me and him developed an awful heroin addiction together. I feel horrible because, you know, he's so much younger than me, and I made him stick that needle in my arm every day, all day. We used till I lost everything. My dad took my house away. My kids still weren't with me. I just kept spiraling, you know, worse and worse and worse. But see, I would hide it. I would shoot up in my breasts instead of in my arms. So they, you know, but hello, they're coming over and there's orange tabs everywhere, tops. And, you know, my kids aren't stupid. But I lied to them all the time. I'm not getting high. He is. You know, I don't do that. But mind you, I'm like deteriorating. I'm getting bone thin. And me and this man had the most amazing connection, relationship. He was so much younger than me, but you know what? He loved me more than any man I ever have been with. Treated me like a queen. He was he is still my whole world, but I feel like I failed him because I just started doing it just so he wouldn't go out behind my back and do it, because I didn't, Lord forbid, something happened to him, because everybody I love leaves me, and dies on me. And from there, we ended up homeless in the streets of Abilene, Texas. We lived in the car. We lived in the motel rooms. And then I told him he needs to go visit his mom, and said, you need to go away from me, or you're going to die. We got to separate. Go visit your mom. So I sent him to Mexico. I stayed back in Texas, and I just continued to sell drugs. But I had gotten clean off the heroin. I went and dipped off somewhere for 5 days, and I got clean. Went cold turkey. And I told him, look, you can do it. Look what I did for us. Little did I even think, like, was he even ready to, get clean? I just thought that I could do it. He would see that I'm strong, Well, little did I know the feds are watching my best friend and me, so I have to get the hell out of Texas. I call him, come get me. He drives 18 hours to Texas, picks me up, but he'd been lying to me this whole time, saying that he was clean, that he wasn't doing heroin anymore. And I'm not a dumb woman. I know my man. So I get there. And I'm just so, like, I felt so betrayed, and I felt like, why the fuck would you lie to me, dude? Like, why didn't you just leave me over there if you were just gonna lie? I don't want us to die. Like, I love you. Well, of course, I didn't start shooting up again, but I started smoking fentanyl pills, the blue pills, the M30s. Well, oh boy, we were collecting unemployment, getting $4,000 a month between both of us, and we stayed in Mexico for a long time. But then the horrible, awful happened. Oh, I get a cigarette?
Sure.
Right. Thank you. We stayed there long enough that we had met some people down there. Eventually became our connects to our drug habit. He was dipping in dabbling, with the heroin, but I was just doing the blue pills, I was disgusted with, look, I was a beautiful model at one point, and I got track marks for life now. But my dude, he is a real addict, dude. And I got, to the point where, like, when he would run out of money and drugs, his whole attitude changes, and he gets like dope fiendish, and he's like digging in trash cans and looking in the house for stuff. And I begged him, like, stop doing this shit. Like, it's so fucking embarrassing. Stop. And he ends up not giving a shit what I said, and he takes off. Mind you, we're in Mexicali, Mexico. And he leaves me at this house. Never again did I think at 40 years old that I would be getting over this again. I was raped 3 days. It's been a year. I was held in a room for 3 days. They lied to me. They told me he was dead. They said everything possible. But I believe we're gonna try to human traffic me. I was taken out to a ranch, and then they would take me back in town in this little room, and I didn't eat or drink anything for 3 days. They were trying to give me these red pills. In Mexico, they call them pingas. It's like equivalent to like a Xanax or a Valium over here. I cheeked every single one of them. They videoed every single part of, you see, like noises like that. I can't do it still. Because I just remember so many like four-wheelers and big loud trucks and guns, and I didn't know if I was gonna live or not. But, you know, thank God that I am by far a dumb human. And then I speak fluent Spanish, and they left me with this man named Psycho. In his little, like, over there in Mexico, they're called cuadras, like the blocks and like the little neighborhoods. This guy had his house burned down, but he still had like a makeshift type bed or whatever he had in that shitty room. He was drinking, and he told me to give him a beer, and I put all of those pills in his beer. And I prayed like hell that he would make him pass out. And I was so fucking terrified. And I just thought, what the fuck am I gonna do? Where's Freddie? Is he really dead? Are they lying to me? Well, I got away. And when I got away, I ran so hard. I ran so hard to a grocery store. And of course, in Mexico, you know, the police, they won't do shit for you unless you have money. They said, oh, we'll pay you a taxi and take you to the line. You can go to the United States and see what they can do for you. They don't give a shit, you know. My phone, I mean, everything that I owned, they stole my car. Everything I owned was gone at this point. So they take me over to the line on the other side of Mexicali. And I get up to the line and I thought, you know what? No. I came here with him and I'm gonna fucking leave here with him. I don't care what it takes. I'm gonna find him and I'm gonna leave with him. And God, if he does not love me, I don't know. I ran into a taxi driver that spoke English really well. And I asked him if I could use his phone to like Facebook. And I logged onto my Facebook and there was Freddie. And he had been trying to find me too. And he told me where he was staying, and he was staying at the hotel that was 5 minutes away behind me. If that's not God, I don't know what is. Because that's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But I go to his door so desperate, and how am I going to tell my dude what happened to me? But if he left me too, you know? I bang on his door and he's not there. The room wasn't in his name. It was in this one guy's name that had been helping him look for me. They wouldn't let me in the hotel. And mind you, he had just crossed over into Calexico and I just had missed him. I didn't even know. So So later on that evening, we get back together. But of course, nothing's free. Nothing's done for free. And, that man wanted me to start working for them over there and sent me in a vehicle to get it registered over here in LA. And I told him, I said, I'm not going back. I don't care what happens. I'm not going back. And you can't fucking make me. And if you want to go back, go back. But I'm not going back. You have no idea what I've just been through. So, we didn't go back, and we ended up going back to Texas because my son graduated high school. But my dude kind of shit on me too. He turned his back on me, and he wasn't there for me. He said he didn't know how to deal with that. What the fuck I do? Like I just prepared for it, So that's really been our relationship is really fucked up still. But we're still together. But I started shooting up heroin again.
You came to LA.
Not yet. I go to Houston, and I died. I did fentanyl. Didn't know it. Died. Didn't have nowhere else to fucking go. We came to LA. And we're still using together. I'm not shooting up heroin. I haven't put a needle in my arm in 12 months. But I smoke fentanyl every day. I've saved 22 people. And for me, I just want happiness for him. I've lived my life. He's 25. He deserves to have a life, He deserves to get married and have kids and everything I can't give him. I love him more than he would ever know. But, there's no amount of love in this world that will ever make an addict quit until they're ready. So, females, if you think that your man is gonna love you and they're doing heroin or any opiate or any drug, get prepared to always be second. And share your life with that, because they're not gonna change for I'm getting better though. I'm close to getting housing, and I'm gonna get myself cleaned up if the Lord permits.
All right, Christy. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Maybe LA will be better to you.
It's not LA. It's me. Because anywhere you go, you can find it if you want it.